electrical workers. You were all critical in crafting this game-changing legislation, as well as many others who could not be here today. The simple fact is that Americans want and need more trains. That's why we're here. Americans not only want more trains, but trains that are faster, more reliable, more affordable, and accessible to new communities across the country. For generations, Americans have had a love affair with trains. They represent the best America has to offer. Trains mean freedom of movement. Whether traveling across cities or regions, they free us from the safety risk of car travel, the threat of traffic jams, and the long lines and tarmac waits of air travel. Trains mean good union jobs. The story of organized rail labor is the story of American progress. The great locomotive of the American economy keeps chugging thanks to the skills and the dedication of train engineers, electricians, conductors, machinists, mechanics, and maintenance of way workers, and everyone in between. Finally, trains mean climate action. By shifting passengers and freight to rail, we can achieve high-speed reductions in emissions and join other nations that have transitioned to electrified rail systems. These lean, green, electric machines are not only zero emission, but they don't spew harmful air pollutants, endangering local communities, which are more likely to be Black and brown and low-income communities, and the workers trying to keep our train lines running. These pollutants hurt the communities who live, work, and play next to these railways, burdened with elevated risk of heart and lung disease. Railroads powered America's past, but they can also supercharge America's future. But we have to invest. It's time to channel that energy once again. And that is why today, with Congressman Deluzio, we are proud to introduce the All Aboard Act, legislation that will lay the tracks to a better future by providing a much-needed investment of more than $200 billion in our nation's rail network. $200 billion is a big number, but where can these investments take us? Well, let's break it down. First, the All Aboard Act provides $50 billion to electrify our most trafficked train corridors and rail yards. Other countries have long embraced clean, electrified trains. But in the United States, outdated, smog-spewing locomotives continue to pollute the air of environmental justice, communities, and rail workers alike. The All Aboard Act would provide the resources to electrify these locomotives, string up catenary wire, and build high-speed electrified trains, all while addressing long-standing environmental injustices. And by the way, it will do all of this with union labor. With investments like this, Massachusetts and other states can build efficient and electrified service. We could expand train service across the Commonwealth without increasing dangerous pollutants in our air. Second, the All Aboard Act provides historic funding for the oversubscribed rail grant programs created by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2022. Thanks to that law, the federal government is back on track, expanding Amtrak service and investing in West-East Rail in Massachusetts, for example, high-speed rail in California, and expanded Keystone train corridor in Pennsylvania. But in many cases, this work is just leaving the station. The All Aboard Act keeps this momentum going by providing $150 billion over 5 years through these grant programs. And third, the All Aboard Act creates a $3.5 billion formula rail grant program for the states. Just as federal formula funds have been critical to expanding the federal highway system, rail deserves the same type of dedicated funding. The All Aboard Act provides states a guaranteed pot of formula dollars for rail projects, planning, and maintenance based on the state's population. If our trains are going to arrive frequently, reliably, and on time, then the money has to do the same. A vision without funding is an hallucination. So we want to have a big, bold future rail system in our country. We're going to have to invest. And finally, no rail system can succeed without the power of organized labor. This legislation makes a massive investment in training workers for both freight and passenger rail, delivered in partnership with unions. You've heard of pay to play? Well, we've got to train in order to take the train. We have to invest in union workers. And this bill is going to kick off a train revolution. And our well-trained, organized labor must be at the center of it. So labor isn't just the conductor of this movement. They're also the engineer, the mechanic, the machinist, and the electrician, all leading us forward. The stakes could not be higher. Climate change demands urgent action, and I'm deeply proud that a true blue-green alliance of labor and environmental leaders are joining us in support of this legislation. This bill represents an opportunity to fundamentally reshape how our society travels. Anything less falls short of the challenge before us. We stand on the shoulders of the generations who built our railways, and now it's time to move down the line. This coalition is gaining speed, an electrified high-speed movement to a greener, more connected future. So if you're hearing this, don't agonize, get organized, don't sit back and rail against the status quo. Join us, help us make rail the status quo for the 21st century. Americans want a more sustainable, connected, and better world. And I'm here to say, all aboard on that train to the future. All aboard, everyone, on this incredible bill that's going to transform the 21st century relationship between rail and all Americans. And now, I'd like to introduce my great partner on this bill from the House of Representatives, Congressman Chris Deluzio. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you, Senator Markey. I forgot my train whistle. Really appreciate your leadership and partnership here to get the trains moving, to give folks safe options to cut pollution and traffic. That's what this is all about. You know, we're joined by a great coalition of labor and so many others who want to get this done. I represent a district in Western Pennsylvania, and I've spent a lot of time, more than I expected, working on rail issues. Our neighbors in East Palestine, Ohio, lived through the horrific Norfolk Southern derailment, as did my constituents in Beaver County. And we know that we've got to fight for our people, for their safety and security. We know we can't trust the big railroads to regulate themselves. We need action from Congress to protect communities like mine who live near the tracks. And I will tell you, 95% of my constituents live within 5 miles of the tracks. This is a real issue for us, has a big impact on my constituents. And for our rail system to be what it can be, safety is a big part of it. You know, we got to get folks where they want to go and move it quickly. It keeps our economy growing and humming when folks can get where they want to go at a good price that protects our environment and protects our air and cuts down on road traffic. So passenger rail, freight rail, this is all part of the rail system that I think we need in this country. And so I'm so proud to be with you, Senator Markey, to introduce the All Aboard Act. This lays out transformational investments in the United States rail network, like electrification. You heard the Senator talk about those details. This bill will make American passenger rail and freight rail a lot safer, a lot cleaner, all while investing and supporting the actual workers, the workers who drive our train system, our rail network forward. That will invest in training centers for passenger and freight rail workers in this country in partnership with organized labor. We love those apprenticeship-style investments and partnerships. Provide the training development necessary to create and deliver a rail network of the future. And you look at the organized labor endorsements of this bill. I'm sure I'm going to leave somebody out, but you get the Transportation Trades Department of AFL-CIO, IBEW, UE, Machinists, Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, Brotherhood of Maintenance Ways Employees, TWU, SMART, many others. That's a great sign of support from the workers whose livelihoods and jobs hang in the balance. Senator Markey shared a lot about what this bill does. I want to reemphasize that this bill will add $10 billion into the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. That's a really important grant program that provides funding for highway rail or pathway rail grade crossing improvement projects that focus on improving safety and mobility of people and goods. I hear about this in my district a lot, that we have lots of rail crossings that could slow down first responders, cops, ambulance, you name it. I've got one in my district in Cheswick that has the second highest accident rate in the whole northeastern United States. We need more money to our communities to get these rail crossings fixed, to make them safer for all of us. I've been pushing the railroads to do that, but we need action from Congress as well. So I'm passing a measure like the All Aboard Act. It's really important to increase that funding for the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. We'll get those crossings safer and we'll save lives. So look, I'm a member on the House side, the Capitol, of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I serve on the Rail Subcommittee. I can tell you this is a really high priority for folks like Senator Markey and me and others who want to see our country enter the 21st century finally and have a great rail program. So Senator Markey, thank you again for your leadership on this bill. I'm excited to work with so many others to get this thing done and deliver a better rail system for this country. Thank you, Senator.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. Next, we are going to hear from Chris Townsend, retired political director of the United Electrical Workers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Congressman. Chris Townsend from the United Electrical Workers Union. We represent around the country, but with a large concentration in Pennsylvania, tens of thousands of workers connected to the rail industry through their employment. We represent the railroad locomotive plant now owned by Wabtec. Thankfully, because otherwise it would have been destroyed by the General Electric Corporation. I also point out that the sign over here with Monopoly game theme could not be more apropos for what we're dealing with the railroads today. Folks may know we're down to 5 Class 1 railroads, where previously there had been hundreds, and there are reasons for that. But one of them is this intense concentration, that the ambitious legislation that you both are promoting here today, and I key the word ambitious. We need ambitious programs like this to take on not just the issue for its reasons, but for the employers who need to be coaxed along a little bit on this to get to where we need to go as a country. UE has pushed very hard in recent years for a green locomotive piece. Those of you that have studied the science of locomotives, they're filthy. And we have too many old jalopy locomotives, rolling around out there that need to be replaced with new, clean, and electrified rail pieces. So the United Electrical Workers will continue its work. We're in coalition with the other unions and many of the community forces out there that want to see this improvement. So UE is there and will stand with you as long, and I will say, I'll wind up by saying that my grandfather, Lynn McKee from Pennsylvania, worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and he was unemployed for 5 years during that catastrophe. But it was the electrification of the Northeast Corridor that put him back to work and enabled him to finish his life with some modicum of decency. And it would be unthinkable today for any of us to imagine the Northeast without the Northeast Electrical Corridor. We hope to see those corridors elsewhere around the country. So thank you from UE, and we support this ambitious legislation. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, so much. Like Chris, my father was the vice president of the UE union in Boston. So I come from that background. Again, I thank Congressman Deluzio for his great historic leadership vision on this legislation. We thank you for that. And now we're going to introduce Athena Moltavev from the Union of Concerned Scientists. Welcome.
I just want to begin by commending Senator Markey and Representative Deluzio for the leadership in introducing the All Aboard Act. As mentioned, I'm Athena Moltavev. I'm with the Union of Concerned Scientists, where we put rigorous, independent science into action, developing solutions and advocating for a healthy, safe, and just future. The All Aboard Act offers a science-backed pathway to upgrading our aging rail system, reducing air pollution, addressing climate change, and providing good-paying jobs to skilled labor workers. The evidence is clear. Transportation is the leading source of climate warming emissions across the US and a huge source of harmful air pollution. Rail, it is one of the cleanest and most efficient ways to move people and goods across the country, but make no mistake, we have a lot more work to do. Rail is a major source of air pollution and has long-lasting impacts on public health. As someone who grew up with asthma, I'm very aware of the real-world impacts of that. Growing up, I had to miss school to attend, or not to attend, but to go to the emergency room, and my parents would have to leave work in order to take me. So this really has real-world impacts on our communities. In the United States, diesel locomotives are the most widely used locomotives. There are locomotives in rail yards today that have been there for so long, they actually don't have any emissions controls. And so this bill is very important in order to get us there. Just as an example, in the United States, only 1% of our rail is electric. In comparison, Switzerland is at 100%. India, for example, is at 94%. They should be at 100 by next year. And so there's more work to do. And we're really excited about the All Aboard Act and the transformative investments that it provides in order to get us to the 21st century, as we had said earlier. So thank you again to Senator Markey and Representative Deluzio for introducing this bill.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Athena. Thanks to the Union of Concerned Scientists. Next, we're going to hear from Saul Levin, the Green New Deal Network.
Welcome. Thanks, Senator. Good to see you too. Hey, everyone. I'm Saul Levin. I'm the Campaigns and Political Director at the Green New Deal Network. And we're so happy to be here today in support of this bill, the All Aboard Act from Senator Markey and Congressman Deluzio. It's hard to overstate how far the United States is behind other countries in terms of building out electric rail, in terms of developing worker safety standards on the railroads, in terms of making it so people can get from point A to point B if their car breaks down. We're tremendously behind, and it's actually, frankly, an international embarrassment. I'm from the state of Michigan, where from age, as long as I can remember, I couldn't get anywhere because I didn't have a car and it wasn't safe to bike down the street. And the only functioning train system really in the state of Michigan, other than an Amtrak line that would always run 6 hours behind schedule to Chicago, was the People Mover, a relic of the 1970s that goes in a circle where you could walk across faster than the train would get around. That's the quality of infrastructure in terms of trains in this country outside of the Northeast Corridor, quite consistently. And so what this act would do is say to every person in the United States of America, if you want to go to the hospital and you don't have enough cars for every person in your family, or if you need to go to the hospital, if you want to get to work and you want to be able to read a book on your way to work, if you want to go to the bar and you want to come home from the bar after having 2 drinks and not get in a car accident, what Senator Markey and Congressman Deluzio are saying is that's a right that every person in this country should have, and why wouldn't we catch up and do it in such a way that we're not polluting communities, we're not putting workers' health and safety at risk, but in fact, we're creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. We're actually reducing emissions in the transportation sector, which accounts for 29% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States of America. So we could not be more excited to participate in the process of this legislation. The senator's team and the congressman's team have been in conversation with everyone we know about this bill. We get calls from people, oh, did you hear about that amazing All Aboard Act? They're talking to everybody so that from the jump, from today when it's being introduced, the legislation is exquisite. There's provisions about all kinds of things that most people don't think of. Protecting environmental justice communities, keeping folks safe who don't even ride the railroads but live next to them. And so we couldn't be more proud to support. And furthermore, we're committing to pushing this legislation forward next Congress. What I want to close with is that public transportation and passenger rail is an essential example of what democracy could look like. It's an essential example of if we all pool a little bit of our money into taxes for the federal government, we could build things like electric rail across this country that none of us could do ourselves. And it's an example of how if the Republican Party had not systematically defunded the public transportation and passenger rail in our government, then this would be a thing people could look to as this is why it matters that our government functions. This is why we believe in democracy. And so we're really excited with the rise of the far right and the terrifying prospects of what might come with this next presidency about legislation like this that puts forward a vision of what every person deserves. Thanks so much for having us, and we're excited to move this forward.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And finally, we're going to hear from Josh Hartford, Special Assistant to the President of the International Association of Machinists. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Markey, Congressman Deluzio, for introducing this important piece of legislation intended to improve air quality technology for locomotives. I am Josh Hartford, Special Assistant to the International President for the International Association of the Machinists and Aerospace Workers, and I have the great pleasure of overseeing our rail division. The IAM has deep roots in the rail industry. We were founded in a locomotive pit in Atlanta, Georgia in 1888. Our members build, inspect, maintain, and repair locomotives, and we have contributed to the transformation of the rail industry for over 135 years, ensuring locomotives from steam to diesel and electric are safe and reliable. And our members are committed to making sure locomotives remain safe and reliable as we evolve towards more environmentally friendly alternatives. From Amtrak to commuter rails into the freight, our members keep locomotives moving. The All Aboard Act has shown us yet again that Senator Markey and Congressman Deluzio are true champions for the working class. Green locomotive technology is vital to cleaning up our environment, and this transition must be made with the current rail workforce fully trained in new technologies, while also preparing the next generation of railroaders. And Senator Markey understands that growing and expanding passenger rail service is one of the fastest ways to help us combat climate change. And employment in the rail industry is not just a job, it's a good union job that provides for a lasting career. And workforce development centers will ensure new railroaders will be properly trained and prepared to enter the workforce. We need standardized training, and the workforce training centers will help us shift towards that. Thank you again, Senator Markey, for your bold vision and understanding that protecting and growing union jobs is vital to improve the rail industry and moving people and goods efficiently and more cleaner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I know we can do this. When I was a boy, we had an electrified trolley system in and out of Boston, 1 block from my house. And at night, with the windows up in the summer, I could hear the trolleys going in and out of Boston. They were the same trolleys that my mother would take my brothers and I hands to take us to downtown Boston. And then they made a big decision. No, they're going to tear down that electrified trolley and widen the highway and have buses that were going to be going in and out, and not the electrified trolleys. Just by comparison, yeah, we had them at the same time that San Francisco had them. They just tore it down. But then in the 1970s, there was a big decision to expand the MBTA, and Malden said, we want 2 stations, please. So we have one in Malden Square and one in Oak Grove. And that's now 3 blocks on the other side of my house that I can hear the trains going in and out of Boston on the MBTA. So I know it can happen, but I know that many other communities said, no, we don't want that rail going through our communities. Now they wish they did. And increasingly, people realize the absolutely incredible role that rail can play in their communities, not just for transportation, but also lowering greenhouse gas emissions. So without the orange line, there would be thousands of people a day in Malden who could not go to school in Boston, could not go to work, on all the stops heading into Boston. And it's indispensable. Otherwise, we'd have more and more and more people in a car alone, driving, creating traffic jams, creating pollution that is avoidable. So we just have to move to the past, to our own past, in order to realize that we made a big mistake in allowing the rest of the world to just move past us because of our love affair with the automobile. So it's time for us to just start working smarter, not harder, so that we're able to move to that future. So we thank all of you so much for being here, and if there are any questions, we'd love to take it at this time. Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Athena, thank you. How do you say your last name?
Although I think actually my brother and I say it differently, so I think you said it the way that we heard.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So give my best to your brother. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.